The Galactic Council chamber was silent as the most feared mind in the galaxy stepped forward. The Jakar telepath had broken warlords, hive queens, and artificial gods. No mind had ever resisted him. The human stood alone, hands behind his back, eyes calm. "Do not shield yourself," the telepath commanded. The human nodded. "I won't." He opened his mind. The telepath touched him and instantly screamed. Blood burst from his sensory organs as he clawed at his own head. The chamber shook with his psychic shriek, a sound so horrifying that dozens of lesser telepaths collapsed in sympathy. He fell to the floor, unconscious. The human did not move. The council stared in horror as their greatest weapon lay broken. Finally, the human spoke, his voice quiet, almost apologetic. That was only the outer door. And across the galaxy, every telepath felt something watching back. For most of recorded history, the galaxy had not been ruled by fleets or weapons. It had been ruled by minds. The great telepathic species rose first, not because they were physically powerful, but because they could reach inside another being and decide the outcome before a battle ever began. Wars ended before armies moved. Rebellions died while still forming as thoughts were discovered and erased. Entire civilizations surrendered without understanding why they had suddenly lost the will to resist. The Galactic Council was built around this truth. At its center sat the psychic races, beings whose consciousness extended far beyond their bodies. Around them sat the lesser species, traders, engineers, warriors, all aware of one simple fact. If the telepaths wished it, resistance was impossible. Mind shields, neural dampeners, synthetic thought filters, every species eventually developed something. Something to hide their thoughts, to protect themselves. All except one. Humanity. The humans were a recent addition to the galactic community. A noisy species from a loud, dangerous world. They had arrived without psychic barriers, without telepathic protocols, without even a basic understanding of mental intrusion. To the Council, this meant only one thing. Primitive minds. Unrefined. Exposed. Vulnerable. Council analysts predicted total mental domination in under a minute. A public demonstration was scheduled. Not as an act of cruelty, but as a lesson. A lesson in hierarchy. If humans wished to join the galaxy, they would first need to understand their place within it. Their thoughts would be examined, their intentions catalogued, their compliance ensured. The telepaths were confident. After all, no species survived long without learning to fear what could touch their minds. And humanity had never learned to fear that at all. They had never needed to. The Jakar did not consider himself cruel. Cruelty required effort. To him, other minds were simply places, rooms to be entered, searched, and emptied. Some were small and fragile. Others were vast and cluttered. None had ever been closed to him. He was one of the Council's highest-ranked telepathic interrogators, summoned only when certainty was required. His species evolved without eyelids, without fear reflexes, without the ability to doubt what they touched. Every memory he had ever entered yielded the same result. Submission. He had tasted the thoughts of warlords moments before execution, felt the collapse of hive queens as their collective consciousness shattered, even unraveled artificial intelligences that believed themselves immune to organic influence. Minds broke. They always did. As he drifted toward the human delegate, the chamber filled with a low psychic hum, an unconscious warning to the lesser telepaths present. Several of them recoiled, instinctively shielding themselves. The Jakar felt nothing. The human stood still. No tremor in his posture. No chemical spike of fear. No attempt to erect even the most primitive mental barrier. That alone was unusual. Most species panicked the moment they sensed him. Their thoughts screamed even before contact. This one was quiet. Not empty. Quiet. The Jakar extended his consciousness, brushing the outer layer of the human's mind. It was dense. Not smooth, not ordered. There were no clear pathways, no disciplined mental architecture. It looked like chaos. He felt amusement ripple through his own thoughts. A mind like this would collapse instantly. He paused, turning slightly toward the council. Observe, he projected calmly. This will be brief. Then he reached deeper. And for the first time in his long, unbroken career, the human did not pull away. He opened the door. The human had been warned. Every species was. The moment a telepath entered your mind, instinct demanded resistance. Even the weakest races developed reflexive barriers, panic, denial, mental noise. Resistance was survival. But the human did none of that. He did not tense. He did not flinch. He did not attempt to hide. Instead, he closed his eyes. From the outside, the scanners registered something impossible. Neural activity did not spike in fear or aggression. It expanded. Layer upon layer of cognition unfolded, not defensively, but deliberately. The Jacquard hesitated. That hesitation alone sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. Inside, the human was preparing. He had grown up on a world that did not offer mercy. A world where survival meant adaptation, where pain was not erased but remembered, studied, and endured. Where billions of individuals lived and died without ever sharing a single thought. Loneliness had shaped them. Imagination had protected them. Trauma had sharpened them. The human exhaled slowly. You want to see? He thought, not as a challenge, not as a threat, but as an invitation. The Jacquard pushed deeper. There was no wall. No shield. No resistance. Only depth. Vast, layered, and endlessly noisy. Memories overlapped with instincts, fear intertwined with curiosity, compassion tangled beside violence. Nothing was filtered. Nothing was quieted. The telepath felt something he had never encountered before. Not hostility. Density. It was like stepping into a storm without realizing it was moving. The human's lips moved slightly, just enough for the translators to catch the whisper. Go ahead, he said softly. Look. And the Jacquard crossed the threshold. The moment the Jacquard crossed fully into the human mind, the universe ceased to make sense. There was no single consciousness waiting for him. There were billions. Not voices speaking together, but memories stacked upon memories, generation upon generation, compressed into one living mind. The telepath staggered as timelines collided. Stone tools and starships existed side by side. Cradle songs overlapped with battlefield screams. Love, grief, rage, hope, none of it separated, none of it dulled. Humans did not forget. They carried. He tried to retreat. The mind did not close. Instead, it expanded. The Jacquard felt himself pulled through ancestral fear, predators in the dark, extinction events burned into DNA, civilizations rising only to collapse and rise again. He felt loss repeated until it no longer destroyed, only strengthened. This was not a mind shaped for peace. This was a mind shaped by survival. Pain did not shatter it. Pain was stored. The telepath screamed as neural storms battered his consciousness. Emotional intensity struck like gravity, crushing and endless. Every individual human mind was alone, yet all of them were present here, layered and echoing. Isolation had made them vast. Suddenly, the Jacquard realized the truth too late. Telepaths evolved to share thought. Humans evolved to contain it. His psychic form began to fracture. Outside the mind, the chamber erupted as a sound burst through reality itself, a psychic shriek so violent that lesser telepaths collapsed, bleeding from their sensory organs. The Jacquard convulsed, clawing at nothing, eyes wide with absolute terror before his body struck the floor. Silence followed. The human stood exactly where he had been. Unaffected. Unchanged. He opened his eyes. And for the first time in galactic history, the galaxy realized. Humanity had not been silent because it was empty. It had been silent because it was full. For several long seconds, no one spoke. The Galactic Council chamber, designed to echo with overlapping thoughts and psychic discourse, was empty of sound. Not even the background hum of shared consciousness remained. Lesser telepaths had severed their links in instinctive panic, retreating into themselves like wounded animals. The Jacquard lay motionless at the center of the floor. Medical drones descended at once, their scanners flaring with confusion. Neural readings spiked beyond known limits, then collapsed into static. His mind was still there, but it was locked, sealed behind patterns no one recognized. He should be awake, one of the healers transmitted, uncertainty leaking through the psychic channel. There is no physical damage. The unspoken truth hung heavy in the chamber. Something had broken that could not be repaired. Council members shifted uneasily. Species that had once ruled entire sectors through mental dominance now avoided looking at the human standing a few steps away. He had not moved. No restraints had been triggered. No defensive measures activated. His posture remained calm, almost respectful, as if he were a guest waiting for permission to leave. External scanners turned toward him. No psychic emissions. No aggressive intent. No trace of mental projection. Only depth. Endless, unreadable depth. "This is impossible," a counselor finally said, its voice trembling despite neural dampeners. No unshielded mind should survive contact. The human met its gaze. "We don't survive it," he replied quietly. "We live with it." That was when fear truly began to spread. Not fear of attack. Fear of misjudgment. If one human mind could do this by accident, by simply existing, then what might billions do together? The medical drones lifted the Jacquard away, his psychic presence gone like a star that had suddenly gone dark. The council understood, then, that they had not witnessed a failed interrogation. They had witnessed a warning. And the human was still standing. The Jacquard regained consciousness in pieces. Not all at once, never all at once. His body lay restrained within a null psionic containment field, its walls designed to silence even the strongest minds. To the council's relief, the field held. To their growing dread, it did not matter. His eyes opened, unfocused, flooded with terror that had no source they could detect. His breathing was uneven, his neural patterns fractured into overlapping spikes, like echoes of something too vast to process. "He is dreaming," one of the psychic healers whispered. The Jacquard's mouth opened. "They are still there," he croaked. The chamber froze. There was no wall, he continued, voice breaking. No guard. No defense. A shudder ran through him. They do not hide their pain. They keep it. The healers attempted to soothe him, flooding his mind with stabilizing signals. He recoiled violently. "Stop," he begged. "I can still hear them." The council demanded clarity. What exactly had he encountered inside the human mind? The Jacquard swallowed, and for the first time in his species' recorded history, he wept. "They remember every death," he whispered. "Every war. Every child lost. Every world burned." His claws dug into the restraint surface. "And they carry it forward." Telepaths evolved to release trauma into the collective, to distribute pain until it lost its weight. Humans did the opposite. "They compress it," the Jacquard said, voice hollow. "They turn suffering into structure." One of the elders asked the question no one wanted answered. Could it be resisted? The Jacquard shook his head slowly. "There was nothing to resist," he said. "I was not attacked." He stared at nothing, eyes wide. "I drowned," he whispered. "In a single mind." Silence reclaimed the chamber. The council finally understood the depth of their mistake. They had believed humans defenseless because they stood alone. They had never considered that loneliness itself could become armor. The council requested an explanation. Not a confession. Not an apology. An explanation. The human was escorted, politely now, into a smaller chamber lined with psychic dampeners and redundant safeguards. None of them activated. No one wanted to test their effectiveness. You possess no telepathic organs, one of the elders began. No collective consciousness. No mental shielding. Yet our strongest mind collapsed upon contact. The human nodded once. We never evolved to be heard, he said. So we evolved to endure. He explained it simply, without pride. Humans were born alone inside their own heads. Every fear, every doubt, every memory remained trapped with them. There was no psychic release, no shared burden. Pain had nowhere to go. So it stayed. Over generations, human minds adapted, not by becoming quieter, but by becoming larger. Imagination became a survival tool. Memory became a warning system. Emotion became fuel. You evolved to connect, the human said, looking directly at the psychic delegates. We evolved to survive isolation. Telepathic intrusion, to a human mind, was not a violation. It was overexposure. An alien consciousness entering an unfiltered human mind experienced everything at once, every unresolved emotion, every suppressed instinct, every half-forgotten nightmare. No buffers. No dampeners. No mercy. We don't attack with our minds, the human continued. We don't know how. A pause. But if you enter them, he added quietly, you experience what we live with every day. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. They reviewed evolutionary data, historical patterns, psychological models. All of it aligned. Humanity had not built defenses against telepathy because they never faced it. They had built themselves. One elder finally asked the question that sealed the room in silence. If this is unintentional, it said carefully, what happens if a human chooses to fight back? The human met its gaze. We haven't had to find out, he replied. And we hope we never do. Emergency protocols rippled across the Galactic Council within minutes. Telepathic empires suspended all outward psychic operations. Interrogations were halted. Mind-scanning treaties were rewritten in real time. Species that had built their dominance on mental superiority suddenly discovered the concept of restraint. Not out of kindness. Out of fear. A new classification request was submitted, something the Council had not issued in over 10,000 cycles. Cognitive hazard species. The designation was unprecedented. It did not imply aggression. It did not accuse hostility. It was a warning. Humans were not to be mentally probed without explicit, informed consent. Telepathic contact was to be treated as exposure to an unshielded singularity, unpredictable, overwhelming, and potentially catastrophic. Ambassadors began to speak differently when addressing the human delegation. Voices lowered. Gestures softened. No one attempted humor. The human had not threatened the council. He had not demanded reparations. He had simply existed. That frightened them more than any weapon. New treaties were drafted granting humanity observer authority in all matters of psychic law. Their worlds were marked as restricted cognitive zones. Research proposals involving human psychology were denied without explanation. The telepathic species remembered the scream. They remembered how quickly certainty had turned into terror. The human stood as the session ended, gathering his belongings with calm efficiency. As he left the chamber, a young telepath, barely trained, felt something brush against his thoughts. Not an attack. A presence. Watching. The telepath recoiled, heart racing, unsure if it had been imagination or instinct. The human never looked back. And the galaxy learned a new rule that day. Some minds are not meant to be touched. Long after the council chamber was emptied, the record remained sealed. Not because it was classified. Because no telepath volunteered to review it. The Jakar survived. His body healed. His psychic abilities returned, partially. But he never again entered another mind. He avoided even the faintest brush of shared thought, retreating into isolation that his species had once considered unthinkable. When asked why, he gave only one answer. "They did not hurt me," he said. "They showed me themselves." Humanity returned to its worlds unchanged. No celebrations. No declarations of superiority. No attempt to exploit the fear they had inspired. They simply went on living. Raising children. Telling stories. Carrying memories. Holding grief quietly and moving forward anyway. The galaxy studied them from a distance, cautious and respectful. It was eventually understood that the telepath had never reached the core of the human mind. He had touched the surface. The part humans showed the universe every day. Beneath that surface lay doors forged by isolation, imagination, loss, and stubborn hope, doors shaped by a species that learned to survive alone in a silent universe. Doors that could open, but rarely did. And so the galaxy learned the most important rule of all. If a human opens their mind to you, it is trust. If they close it, it is mercy. And if they ever invite you inside, pray they still want you to leave.